Harley-Davidson has built V-twins for more than 100 years. It has powered most of Harley-Davidson's iconic motorcycles since 1911. It defines the brand more than any logo or paint scheme ever has. In 1909, the first one failed so badly, the company destroyed nearly every copy of it. Around 27 were built. Expectations were high. The engine barely worked. That failure became the direct ancestor of the engine configuration Harley-Davidson still builds today. This is the story of the V-twin that had to fail once before it could become an icon. Stick around because the company's decision to withdraw its own product is the real turning point here, not the engine itself. Chapter 1. Harley-Davidson before the V-twin. In 1901, a 21-year-old draftsman named William Harley sketched a small engine meant to be bolted onto a bicycle. 2 years of work with his friend Arthur Davidson turned that sketch into a working machine. And by 1903, Harley-Davidson had its first real motorcycle. Single-cylinder, dependable, built for roads that weren't built for anything with an engine. For a few years, that was enough. Riders wanted a machine that started reliably and didn't fall apart. Harley-Davidson delivered exactly that. Then the market changed. Riders started asking for more speed, more hill climbing power, more capacity to carry weight. Competing manufacturers pushed out bigger engines to chase the same demand. A single-cylinder engine could keep Harley-Davidson alive for a while. It couldn't keep the company ahead. The competition wasn't abstract. Rival brands were already advertising twin-cylinder machines, and hill climbing and endurance events increasingly showcased the advantages of larger engines. Riders noticed. Dealers noticed. The company had built its name on dependability, but dependability alone wasn't going to win customers who wanted speed and power just as much as reliability. Chapter 2. Why Harley decided to build a V-twin. Harley-Davidson wasn't chasing a V-twin because it looked impressive. The single-cylinder engine had hit a ceiling, and endurance runs and hill-climbing contests were becoming the events that decided which manufacturer looked credible and which one looked outdated. William Harley's solution sounded simple on paper. Take the single-cylinder engine the company already trusted and add a second cylinder to it. More power without starting the design over from nothing. The idea was straightforward. Making it work reliably in an actual motorcycle frame was a different problem entirely. Chapter 3. Designing the first V-twin. The cylinder count wasn't the hard decision. The angle was. Harley and his team settled on 45 degrees, with the cylinders set close together instead of spread wide. That kept the engine narrow enough to fit inside a normal motorcycle frame, without turning the bike into something bulky and hard to handle. On paper, the layout delivered exactly what the company wanted. More displacement, more power. A shape compact enough to fit where a single-cylinder engine used to sit, without leaving the rest of the motorcycle's components crowded out. Every part of the design pointed toward the same goal. None of that meant the engine would actually work once it left the drawing board. Paper doesn't turn over, metal does. Engineering drawings can promise almost anything. A motorcycle earns its reputation somewhere else entirely, out on real roads, under real riders, in conditions no workshop test can fully predict. Before the V-twin could become the machine everyone expected, it had to survive that test first. Chapter 4. Secret Development. Harley-Davidson didn't announce any of this. The work happened behind closed workshop doors, years before the public ever saw a finished twin. William Harley believed a second cylinder could deliver the power riders wanted without throwing away everything the company had already learned building singles. Word still got out. In 1907, trade journals reported Harley-Davidson was developing a double-cylinder motorcycle, and contemporary reports suggest a prototype V-twin was shown publicly that year at the Chicago Automobile Show. Even with that attention building, Harley-Davidson refused to rush the engine into showrooms. The company kept testing behind the scenes, unwilling to release something that couldn't back up the expectations it had just created. Confidence inside the factory kept growing, even while the public still had nothing but rumor and a single show appearance to go on. Chapter 5. The 1909 Model 5D arrives. In 1909, Harley-Davidson introduced its first production V-twin, the Model 5D. A 45-degree V-twin engine, roughly 49.5 cubic inches of displacement, producing around 7 horsepower. For a company whose whole reputation was built on single-cylinder reliability, this was a different class of machine entirely. The rest of the motorcycle changed with it. A longer, heavier frame for stability, a redesigned fuel tank, the first major change since the company's earliest machines, a rear center stand, standard for the first time, making the bike easier to start and maintain, a forward-mounted magneto, unique to this model. Even the belt drive system was different, dropping the idler pulley used on earlier Harleys to adjust belt tension. Harley-Davidson hadn't just added a cylinder, it had redesigned the motorcycle around it, component by component. 7 horsepower. On paper, that number put the 5D ahead of anything Harley-Davidson had built before. Dealers were ready, riders were ready, the engine wasn't. Chapter 6. Why the first V-twin failed. The V-twin itself wasn't the flaw. One specific piece of engineering was. The 5D used the same atmospheric intake valve design as Harley's single-cylinder engines. A valve pulled open by engine vacuum instead of a mechanical linkage. That system worked fine on a single cylinder. Inside a V-twin, the added displacement meant the atmospheric intake system struggled to provide consistent airflow, and the valve simply couldn't keep up. The result was uneven breathing and inconsistent power, exactly the kind of unreliability Harley-Davidson had spent years positioning itself against. A single-cylinder engine only had to time one piston's suction stroke correctly. A V-twin demanded that same vacuum-driven system handle greater airflow demands, and the atmospheric valve simply wasn't built for that job. Rather than keep selling a motorcycle that undercut its own reputation, the company pulled it. Production stopped almost as soon as it started. Nearly every 5D that had already left the factory was recalled, and most were destroyed. 27 motorcycles. That's the entire production run of Harley-Davidson's first V-twin, and the company destroyed nearly all of them on purpose. Chapter 7. Back to the drawing board. Most companies keep selling a flawed product while they fix it quietly. Harley-Davidson didn't. In 1910, the company sold no V-twin at all. No stopgap version, no patched fix rushed to market. Just a full year with nothing to show for the twin-cylinder program while engineers rebuilt it from the ground up. That was a real cost. A full model year of twin-cylinder sales handed to competitors who kept selling their own twins, while Harley-Davidson had nothing to offer in that category. The atmospheric intake system was gone. In its place, a new F-head design, with mechanically operated intake valves that didn't depend on suction alone. In 1911, the Model 7D arrived, a 49 cubic inch V-twin producing 6.5 horsepower. Less power on paper than the 5D promised, far more reliable in practice. The 7D was the version that finally delivered what the 5D had only promised, and it became the foundation for Harley-Davidson's future V-twin development. Chapter 8. Legacy of the first V-twin. The Model 5D isn't remembered because it worked. It's remembered because Harley-Davidson refused to give up on the idea behind it, even after killing the product built on top of it. The 45-degree V-twin layout from that failed engine became the company's defining signature, carried forward through every V-twin Harley-Davidson has built since, from the 7D in 1911 through more than a century of engines that followed it. Today, only one original Model 5D is known to survive, held in the Harley-Davidson archives in Milwaukee. What the first V-twin teaches you. Lesson 1. Adding capability isn't the same as adding a part. Harley-Davidson's engineers discovered that a second cylinder wasn't a straightforward extension of a design that already worked. It wasn't. The exact system that ran a single cylinder cleanly couldn't keep up once the displacement increased. Lesson 2. Protecting your reputation can mean destroying your own product. Harley-Davidson had already sold 27 motorcycles built on a flawed engine. Instead of quietly patching them in the field, the company recalled nearly every one and destroyed most of them, then gave up an entire year of V-twin sales to rebuild the engine properly. Lesson 3. The failed version and the successful version are often the same idea, built twice. The 45-degree layout, the displacement, the ambition behind the 5D, all carried straight through to the 7D. What changed wasn't the concept. The biggest change was replacing the atmospheric intake system, alongside several other refinements that made the engine reliable. Harley-Davidson's most recognizable engine configuration didn't begin as a success story. It began as a product the company built, sold, and then quietly erased, because an unreliable icon was worse than no icon at all. The company that's remembered today for building some of the most recognizable V-twins in motorcycling history got there by first admitting, in public, that its own first attempt wasn't good enough to keep on the road.